Last week we ended up taking our car back out to Colorado National Speedway, where we had our best on-track effort so far this year. Definitely could have been a bit better, but it was nice being able to hang out with most of the cars and battle for position and not be kind of the slowest car anymore. Unfortunately, some negligence in the pits in between sessions ended up ending our day a bit early. We developed a vibration in our dash and our feature and just couldn't keep up with the car, and we ended up actually losing some parts. So we're just gonna go over what we did throughout the day and where else to start other than practice. So our first practice of the day was actually very good for us. We learned very quickly that our car was just way too tight on corner exit. We weren't really able to lay down into the throttle the way we wanted to without just dump trucking it towards the outside wall. We only made a couple laps during this first session and ended up pulling off relatively quickly to try and make our adjustments and get back out there, but by the time we got out of the car and made the adjustments, it was already time for the second practice. And it's a good thing we pulled off so quickly, because later in that same session, someone had dumped oil all over the track in turns 3 and 4, and this caused a couple of cars that ended up driving that same line to go towards the wall. One of them ended up clipping their right front pretty significantly and forced them to bring out their backup car. But some other drivers made it away with only some minor scuffs, nothing too major. But unfortunately, that forced the track workers to lay down that speedy dry. It's just a little bit of powder, basically cat litter on the track, and didn't have anyone run through it to try and get it to clean away. So during our second practice, while we were feeling so much better after making our adjustments, we ended up getting into that speedy dry and went for a nice little ride. Now, the reason we were up there in the first place was just to give way to a couple of the faster cars. We didn't want to be in their way too much because there are a lot of cars out here during practice and the track can get pretty congested. Obviously, I'm pretty stoked that we didn't hit the wall. I'm honestly pretty surprised that our starter still worked, because I had released the brakes a little bit and tried to steer the car away from the wall just to get it not to smack the left front. Obviously quite surprised that we were still drivable, but this is kind of where the night started to go a bit downhill for us. And that's because when we pulled into the pits after that practice session, we never ended up going through the rear end and checking those bolts that typically get that stress. So we ended up just going straight into qualifying, same as the car pulled off during that second practice. There was a third practice, but we opted out of it just to kind of calm ourselves down and just kind of prepare and switch our tires for qualifying so we wouldn't have to stress out about it. Now, qualifying was pretty okay for us. Our first lap obviously was the good one at a 19.3, and that time ended up putting us right at 25th on the leaderboard out of 33 cars. So obviously our qualifying is getting a little bit better as we now seem to have solved our cutting issue. But our second lap, we were still pushing super tight, so during our dash, we ended up dropping the right front and raising that right rear in terms of pressure quite a bit. Unfortunately, my GoPro was dead during the dash and I didn't have time to switch the battery out beforehand, so I don't have any footage of that, but that's kind of when we started developing that really poor vibration, and you'll be able to see that once we get into the feature a little bit. But don't have much to add on from the dash because we ended up doing pretty poorly. We started pretty okay, I think about 5th row on the inside, but quickly lost positions, and as the vibration got worse, it just kind of got uncomfortable in the car, and we just never ended up moving forward. Now, with our dash being so poor, we ended up not having a great starting spot for our feature. It's not the end of the world, but they do split our classes up here into 2 separate features, just so that we have a little bit of a better show since we have so many cars that show up. We get a pretty good jump here on the start. We were able to hold onto the bumper pretty well on the 19 up until we hit turn 1. And the end of this lap is pretty ridiculous. We ended up getting past here on the inside by the 28. Not the end of the world, but then we can see right through our windshield, the 17 kind of goes around, starts coming up the track. we start hitting our brakes, but unfortunately the cars in front of us are not so lucky. Now, we're going to go ahead and slow this down a little bit. We got the 28 car coming off the corner and just not slowing down, it seems, once that 17 car was coming up the track. So obviously super unfortunate for the 19 and the 95. Those are the ones that look like they got the worst end of the deal, with the 19 pretty much tearing off their rear clip. But unfortunately that wreck did dispel a lot of debris, and we ended up getting placed under a red flag and being held in turns 3 and 4. Now at this point in the race, we've lined back up and getting ready for the restart here. We did line up on the outside, right behind the 34 car, which they don't typically get the best restarts, it seems. We've been stuck behind them before and had to make our way around them safely in the past. But today we were able to get around them pretty okay, and we were able to contend with the 95 here on our inside. We were able to keep them back behind us for a while and able to chase down the 78 here. We did seem to find a little bit of a better balance when adjusting our tire pressures and making our other adjustments. And now we are kind of borderline loose on corner exit, which I'd rather be loose than super tight. That way we can carry the speed off the corner. But as we make our way around the 78, we now have a decent bit of ground to catch up between us and the 17 and 97 in front of us. Obviously, you can see now the camera inside the car is shaking around quite a bit. And if you can imagine what that feels like being strapped to an aluminum seat, it doesn't feel super good. And obviously we didn't know exactly what was going on, but we were kind of just trying to push through as best as we can and see how many laps we could make and hopefully not destroy our car. So here we get a really good exit off this corner, way better than the 97 in front of us. This is obviously a couple laps later, but now we're in a spot to where I think we have a better car than the 97 in front of us. We did tangle with them a little bit last time and ended up spinning around trying to make the same move that we're doing now. We tried to play it a little bit safer. We ended up locking up a little bit, thinking that they were going to come down again, but they did end up holding their line a little bit high, so we're pretty appreciative of that, and obviously we were able to make that pass there. Still feeling a significant vibration and still a little bit more loose than tight, but like I said, it's not necessarily a bad thing that we feel this way. Now we're knocking on the bumper of the 17 here, trying to force a mistake on them without trying to make one ourselves. We are getting some pretty decent exits, but we do end up making the inside work for us here though, and end up making the pass. Now we got a significant ground between us and the next car in front of us, which I believe was the 9 at this point in the race. But unfortunately for them, we ended up getting another caution and ended up closing this gap up. So for our final restart here, we actually restarted in the 8th position, just on the outside behind the 48 next to the 9 car. Didn't get the best jump, but at this point you can just tell that the vibration is way worse than it's probably ever been, and at this point I knew that our time was probably limited in this race, and so we were just trying to play it easy and trying to stay on the outside just in case anything happened, because our pit exit is right at the end of turn 2. So I just want to make sure that we have a clear shot to get to the pits in case we need to. Obviously we lose position to the 9 here. They are a bit quicker than we are. We've got the 17 back to our inside here. We're trying to hold on to the position as best as we can, but we're no match for the inside lane, trying to hang on to the outside. We do run a couple more laps. Unfortunately, we ended up getting our receiver loosened up from the Velcro strap that we have on our helmet, and it is actually currently inside the car flying right now, just kind of going with the flow of gravity. So that was a bit distracting to me as a driver. We have to figure out a different way to mount our receiver now, because that's not going to work if it continues to happen. Obviously we get a little bit loose here and just kind of hold the outside, because I'm pretty sure the 97 is getting ready to peak inside right here, and we didn't want to ruin their race, so we just continued driving, and eventually we felt a little pop and ended up calling it a night based off of that. We didn't know what it was, but I knew it couldn't be very good, so right here we just kind of started slowing down, let everyone by, and just exited the track, because we figured it's the safest way to let them continue racing, but also to bring our car home in the best shape possible, considering everything that's going on and the negligence we had going through the bolts and not securing everything down properly. So obviously, with the vibration we were feeling throughout the feature and ended up feeling a little bit of a bump, we decided to call it a night and just pull off the track early. We didn't want to risk damaging our car anymore or possibly losing control of it, and we figured, right now is a good spot to be in. Unfortunately, we did finish pretty much last because of it, but I'd rather be able to bring the car home in one piece, or at least in 99% of the pieces it has, as we have right in front of us here. Couple things we lost. Obviously, we lost our front bumper during the race, and it seems like it ended up pulling out the nut that's welded on one side, and ended up losing that from the vibration. It also seems like we ended up having our drive shaft start backing out from the coupler. You can see there is actually a bit of space right there, and obviously that bolt on top is backing out, and so are the ones underneath. Definitely not a pretty sight. We think that that's actually where our vibration came from. As we got back here towards the rear end, we didn't fully lose the bolt holding on our upper link, but it was like 90% out and ended up pulling some of the threads in. So we did end up going through and chasing those threads with a tap, just to make sure, and make sure that they're still straight and whatnot. Just a bummer for us to have to pull off so early after having such a good day. We were out there passing cars, probably sitting mid-pack whenever we ended up pulling off, but we just couldn't bear the vibration anymore. We are going to make a couple changes to this car just to hopefully not have that happen again. Obviously, I wish our day ended with a little bit of a better outcome, but I'm definitely thankful that the car is back in the garage in a pretty reasonable piece. It's not going to be super hard to work on it from here and get all the replacements that we need for it. But we're gonna tear into this car in the next video, so hopefully you guys stick around for that. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope to catch you in the next one.